Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Chanda Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Chanda Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vandachari Yamuna Tira Vandachari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading today from Srimad-bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 1, Text number 4. And the chapter is called The Advent of Lord Krishna. Nivrita tarsha upagiyamanad Bhavoshadat chotra mano viramat ka uttama shloka gunanuvadat puman virajeta vina pashugnat Nivrita tarshar upagiyamanad. Bhavo Sharach Chotra Manobhiramat. Ka Uttama Shloka Gunanuvadat. Puman Vira Jeta Vina Pashugnat. Nivrita Tarshaya Upagiyamanad. Bhavo Sharach Chotra Manobhiramat. Ka Uttama Shloka Gunanuvadat. Puman Virajeta Vina Pashugnat. Nivrita Tarsha Upagiyamanad. Bhavo Sharach Chotra Manobhiramat. Ka Uttama Shloka Gunanuvadat. Puman Virajeta Vina Pashugnat. Nivrita Tarsha Upagiyamanad. Bhavasta Kshotra Manobhiram. Ka Uttama Shloka Gunanuvadat. Man Virajeta Vina Pashugnat. Nivrita Tarsha Upagiyamanad. Upasad Shotra Manobhiramat. Ka Uttama Shloka Gunanuvadat. Puman Virajeta Vina Pashugnat. Some word for word synonyms. Nivrita, released from. Tarshai, lust or material activities. Upagiyamanat, which is described or sung. Bhava Ashodat, which is the right medicine for the material disease. Shotra, the process of oral reception. Manaha, the subject matter of thought for the mind. Abhiramat, from the pleasing vibration from such glorification. Kaha, who? Uttama Shloka, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Guna Anuvadat, from describing such activities. Puman, a person. Virajeta can keep himself aloof. Vina, except Pashugnat, either a butcher or one who is killing his own personal existence. Translation. Glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is performed in the parampara system. That is, it is conveyed from the spiritual master to the disciple. Such glorification is relished by those no longer interested in the false temporary glorification of this cosmic manifestation. Descriptions of the Lord are the right medicine for the conditioned soul undergoing repeated birth and death. Therefore, who will cease hearing such glorification of the Lord except a butcher or one who is killing his own self? Repeat after me. Glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is performed in the parampara system. That is, it is conveyed from the spiritual master to the disciple. Such glorification is relished by those no longer interested in the false temporary glorification of the cosmic manifestation. Descriptions of the Lord are the right medicine for the conditioned soul undergoing repeated birth and death. Therefore, who will cease hearing such glorification? Of the Lord, except a butcher or one who is killing his own self. Srila Prabhupada's purport. In India, it is the practice among the general populace to hear about Krishna, either from the Bhagavad Gita or from the Srimad-bhagavatam, in order to gain relief from the disease of repeated birth and death. Although India is now fallen, when there is a message that someone will speak about Bhagavad Gita or Srimad-bhagavatam, thousands of people still gather to hear. This verse indicates, however, that such recitation of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad-bhagavatam must be done by persons completely freed from material desires, nivrita tarshai. Everyone within this material world, beginning from Brahma down to the insignificant ant, is full of material desire for sense enjoyment. And everyone is busy in sense gratification. But when thus engaged, one cannot fully understand the value of Krishna Katha, either in the form of Bhagavad Gita or in Srimad-bhagavatam. If we hear the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead from liberated persons, this hearing will certainly free us from the bondage of material activities. But hearing Srimad-bhagavatam spoken by a professional reciter cannot actually help us achieve liberation. Krishna Katha is very simple. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as he himself explains. Tak paratarang nanyat kinchid ati dhananjaya. O Arjuna, there is no truth superior to me. Simply by understanding this fact, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can become a liberated person. But especially in this age, because people are interested in hearing Bhagavad Gita from unscrupulous persons who depart from the simple presentation of Bhagavad Gita and distort it for their own personal satisfaction. They fail to derive the real benefit. There are big scholars, politicians, philosophers, and scientists who speak on Bhagavad Gita in their own polluted way, and people in general hear from them, but being uninterested in hearing the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead from a devotee. A devotee is one who has no other motive for reciting Bhagavad Gita and Srimad-bhagavatam than to serve the Lord. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has therefore advised us to hear the glories of the Lord from a realized person. Bhagavat paro diya bhagavat stane. Unless one is personally a realized soul in the science of Krishna consciousness, a neophyte should not approach him to hear about the Lord, for this is strictly forbidden by Srila Sanatana Goswami, who quotes from the Padma Purana, Avaishnava Mukho Girnam Putam Hari Katam Ritam Shravanang Naiva Kartyavyang Sarpochishtang Tata Payaha. One should avoid hearing from a person not situated in Vaishnav behavior. A Vaishnav is Nivrita Trishna. That is, he has no material purpose, for his only purpose is to preach Krishna consciousness. So-called scholars, philosophers, and politicians exploit the importance of Bhagavad Gita by distorting its meaning for their own purposes. Therefore, this verse warns that Krishna Katha should be recited by a person who is Nivrita Trishna. Sukadeva Goswami epitomizes the proper reciter for Srimad-bhagavatam, and Parikshit Maharaj, who purposefully left his kingdom and family prior to meeting death, epitomizes the person fit to hear it. A qualified reciter of Srimad-bhagavatam gives the right medicine, bhavo shadi, for the conditioned soul. The Krishna consciousness movement is therefore trying to train qualified preachers to recite Srimad-bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita throughout the entire world, so that people in general in all parts of the world may take advantage of this movement and thus be relieved of the threefold miseries of material existence. It's a long purport. Maybe I should do it in two parts. So let's start, because otherwise the whole class will be just the purport and we won't speak. Right. A little bit. Yeah, the sun will keep moving, so after some days it won't matter. Yes, it happens every year. it shows the regularity to the sun, which means there is a supreme controller who is making it every day, every moment follow a certain path. Because we know that every year at a certain time, the sun's going to come in here, and after a few days, then it moves somewhere else. Yes. Hmm? Yes. Yes. And the sun himself, the sun god, he is moving his chariot. This is as was described in Srimad-bhagavatam. He's actually moving, the sun is like moving on a chariot around on a certain path around the universe. And he goes a certain speed, and sometimes the speed increases, but every movement uh, uh, and every change of speed of the sun is directed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The demigod in charge of the sun is also out of fear, out of respect, but it says out of fear of the Supreme Lord, he moves the sun in a certain way. So, Om Jnana Timirandasha Jnana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Well, okay, so Srila Prabhupada is mentioning here that we should hear the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad-bhagavatam, from a self-realized soul, which is why we're reading for books. He certainly is a self-realized soul. When Srila Prabhupada first came to America, and early on he was doing his translation of the translation and purports for the Bhagavad Gita. He already had come with the first canto of Srimad-bhagavatam. Then again, he started to write his translations and purports for the Bhagavad Gita as it is. And so when he was doing that, some lady, he describes, asked him, there are so many Bhagavad Gitas, even in English, there are so many versions of Bhagavad Gita. Why are you going to write another one? They said at the time, there were maybe 600 different versions or 600 different printing of the Bhagavad Gita in English. It was a very popular book for translating and writing commentaries on. But Srila Prabhupada said yes, because practically none of them probably none of those writers are presenting Krishna's words as they are. For someone who's a scholar, material scholar, it may be very attractive to be able to say, oh, here's this Bhagavad Gita. There's so many esoteric verses in there. I'll translate it and I'll give my own interpretation of this book. Then I will become famous because my interpretation will try to surpass what somebody else's interpretation. So Srila Prabhupada he said people do like that. But of course, he also said that no one really became devotees of Krishna from reading all those other Bhagavad Gitas, because it really wasn't Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita means what Krishna says, and if the translations, what to speak of the commentaries, are not according to what Lord Krishna says, then it's useless as far as becoming Krishna conscious goes. There were back during the British rule in controlling India, there was some British person I don't remember his name right off. He also read Bhagavad Gita, but his purpose was the same. It was just for political purposes. He would read Bhagavad Gita, and then he would quote with his own interpretation, quote different verses from Bhagavad Gita to try to get the people and the people that the Indian people that were under the British to follow what the British wanted them to do. He he would present it in that way. Of course, that wasn't at all the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita, but he would study it just so he could present it in a way for the political purpose of controlling the Indian population, to make them um, ultimately the British were trying to convince the Indians to give up the whole Vedic culture. There was a very big push for that. Um, and unfortunately, a lot of them did that. But anyway, by following if we follow the um, um, if we want to understand this philosophy, then we have to hear it through the disciplic succession. You cannot figure out Krishna's words. Even if you're a great scholar and you're trying and you know Sanskrit and you can try to do it, you still are not going to come to the proper conclusion simply by trying to figure it out on your own. So that's why we must receive this knowledge through the disciplic succession. In other words, you cannot by some you cannot try this. You can not, no, better. You cannot, by some material means, figure out and understand these teachings. And Lord Krishna says himself that if we want to understand him, we have to understand him through his devotees. So for us in the Krishna consciousness movement, that basically means we get this knowledge through Srila Prabhupada's books. And if someone tries to, so say someone comes along and they say, well, okay, I studied Sanskrit. I'm an expert in the Sanskrit language. Maybe they are, but they want to ignore the commentaries and the presentation that comes through the disciplic succession. Then they will not understand, because this knowledge is not something that you can just figure out with your brain. This is actually knowledge which is it's realized knowledge. It's what we get from Krishna consciousness is actually realized knowledge. We may read Bhagavad Gita, but we don't understand it until we actually do some practical service, and until we hear it until we hear it from the right source. And I'm sure we all have experience. I certainly have, that if I have some question, some doubt about something, and I can't figure it out, and then I just read. Open up any of Srila Prabhupada's books. You open them up and you start reading, and it's like Krishna's saying, "Okay, here's your answer. Doesn't matter where you open it up. It's the answer to the question or the doubt is there, because Krishna is there." And in fact, just like Krishna, he's unlimited. So Krishna is personally unlimited, and Krishna is therefore his words are unlimited. The Bhagavad Gita is unlimited. The Srimad-bhagavatam is actually unlimited. In fact, the Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, one time, he advertised that he was going to present he was going to, for 30 days he was going to present Srimad-bhagavatam. So in India, it's the common practice back then, and I'm sure it still goes on now. They have these 7 days or 30 days of readings from Srimad-bhagavatam, but they always go to the 10th canto, especially to the part of the rasa dance, right? So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he said that for 1 month I will speak on the Srimad-bhagavatam. So people assumed that he was going to speak on the part about the gopis and the rasa dance and so on for 1 month. So many people came because they wanted to hear these things. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, that wasn't his intention. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta took the first verse of the Srimad-bhagavatam, and so on. He took that first verse, which is a long verse, and he lectured on it for 30 days. So it's like maybe one word per lecture, and that he expanded on it so much. So, of course, those who really wanted to hear the Srimad-bhagavatam, they would stay. But most people realize that I don't want to just hear philosophy. I want to hear the so-called lusty activities, so-called lusty activities with Krishna and the gopis. So many people left. They were not interested. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta presented like that for 30 days on one verse. He was such a great scholar. And it also shows, not only was he a great scholar, but also shows the Srimad-bhagavatam, it's unlimited. He could have spoken on one verse for 30 years if he had wanted to. Shri Gauratai, Shri Shivada, Vrajabihari, Jagannath, Balaram, Lady Subhadra, Ki Jai. The verse here says, it's described, and I guess it'll be just explain a little more later in the purport, but the last line of this verse says, therefore, who will cease hearing such glorification of the Lord except a butcher or one who is killing his own self? So that's significant, because one who's a butcher or who's continuing to, continuing, not stopping to, he's not giving up eating meat or not giving up killing animals. As long as we don't give up these bad habits, then there's no way that we're going to develop a desire for hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So of course, Srila Prabhupada he made that point very clear, because we take up the path of Krishna consciousness if we want to really hear and hear about the glorification of the Lord. If we want to actually get an attraction for that, then of course we have to give up certain activities, especially the eating meat and so on. So Srila Prabhupada, from the very beginning, when he always preached very heavily the importance of giving up those, eating meat, illicit sex, intoxication, and gambling. He insisted on these things, and it wasn't just Srila Prabhupada's. It wasn't just like a particular thing that Srila Prabhupada thought up. This practice is there by all the acharyas, and it's there in the yoga system too. You want to practice back in the previous ages when you practice the yoga system, you couldn't be practicing the yoga system and be having, illicit sex and eating meat and getting intoxicated and so on. There was no way that you're going to succeed. So Srila Prabhupada made these points very, very clear that anyone can take up the path of Krishna consciousness from the beginning by adding some Krishna consciousness to your life, but we can only really succeed. We can only really advance when we give up the bad habits. And so in the path of Krishna consciousness, there is Shraddha. We start with Shraddha, the faith. Faith has, there's a couple of, faith actually comes up twice. But we have a little bit of faith, a little desire, a little, somehow or other, a little curiosity, whatever it is, to at least look into the path of Krishna consciousness. That it starts with that. And then, of course, then you get the association. If you have a little faith and you take up the path of Krishna consciousness, then of course you're going to come in contact with devotees, the association of devotees, and then once you start associating with devotees, if everyone's around a temple and they're coming very regularly, very quickly they'll be engaged in some kind of devotional service. That devotional service, just by that devotional service, immediately someone can start getting realization, just by engaging a little bit of devotional service. So Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, that's association of devotees. Bhajana Kriya means start doing some practical devotional service. So, and anyone can do this. Doesn't matter who we are, doesn't matter what our background is, doesn't matter what our bad habits are or not. Anyone can start that part of the process. But then the fourth level of stage of advancing towards the ultimate goal of becoming pure devotee of Krishna, that fourth level is called anartha nivritti. Anartha nivritti means you give up the bad habits. Okay, I like chanting Hare Krishna. I like prasadam. I kind of like to hear the classes. I like, so many things that we like. But if I want to actually advance in Krishna consciousness, I need to give up the bad habits because therefore Srila Prabhupada established early on, if you want to become Krishna conscious, you have the 4 regulative principles. Srila Prabhupada says all sinful activities in the world are summarized within those 4 regulative principles. So we don't have to think of thousands and millions of different rules and regulations and different sins and like that. Try to figure out everything, make sure I'm following or not following. If we can follow strictly the 4 regulative principles, then there's no sinful activities. So Srila Prabhupada made that clear from the beginning, and he also made it clear in his system, which was a Srila Bhaktisiddhanta system also. In his system, you want to get your initiation, your first initiation, you had to be very, very strictly be following all those principles. Sometimes in other groups, there's other methods where they say, well, this first initiation is not so important. It's just an introduction. So you start chanting Hare Krishna, you get initiated, and then if you become serious, and then follow the principles and all that, then you maybe go for second initiation. But that's Srila Prabhupada said no from the very beginning, because as Srila Prabhupada also said, at the time of the first initiation, then the spiritual master takes or removes the past karma of the disciple. So of course, for the spiritual master also, if he's doing like that, and the disciple was to continue just engaging in sinful activities, but they haven't given up the bad habits, then of course it's a very big burden for the spiritual master. Spiritual master, the spiritual master, the principle to the principle of that, the spiritual master taking the karma, or remove, at least removing the karma from us. The principle of that is sarva dharmang parityaja mamekang sharanang vrajahang twang sarva papebhyo mokshayishami masuchaha. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, 1866, give up all varieties of religion and just surrender to me, and I will protect you from all sinful reactions. So what happens at the time of the initiation, the first initiation, is that we make an agreement with the spiritual master that, okay, from this point on, or for maybe 6 months, a year before that on, I will chant 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna mantra on my beads, and I will not engage in any of those 4 sinful activities. No more for the rest of my life. So means the spiritual master is engaging us. We are surrendering to Krishna by surrendering to the spiritual master, and the spiritual master is saying, okay, Krishna, Lord Krishna, I'm taking charge of these disciples. They've agreed to follow me, and I will lead them back to you. But if the disciple starts getting deviating and engaging again in sinful activities, then the spiritual master also gets some reaction for that, because that was the agreement. So Srila Prabhupada, he would always, sometimes when Srila Prabhupada was becoming ill, he would say, the problem is too many of my disciples are not following the principles. They're not following the rules and regulations. So Srila Prabhupada, so he very much emphasized this, and of course, in the past, I was explaining in the 9 stages of devotional service, 9 levels of devotional service up to the point of Krishna Prema. If we have to definitely have to give up those the bad habits, and then at that point, then we can become fixed, steady in our service. Fixed in our service means that, okay, I'm fixed. I'm determined. I'm going to become. I want to go all the way through. I'm going to become Krishna conscious, and this is what I'm going to do with my life. If we're not steady, then we're thinking, well, maybe I'll do this for a while. Maybe I'll go out and try to enjoy the material world a little bit. I'll come back and try this again. No, that's not. There's no good for spiritual advancement. Steadiness in Krishna consciousness, which is necessary if we're going to actually advance, means that we are steady in our determination. I'm convinced. In fact, Srila Prabhupada says, he says, he was just explaining once, what is a sadhu? Who is a sadhu? Sometimes you say, sadhu. Okay, what is a sadhu? What does it mean to be a sadhu? Sadhu means that you are basically you're 100% convinced of that this path of Krishna consciousness is the best thing. It's the goal of life. You're convinced of that. That's sadhu. and Srila Rupa Goswami says that also in another way. Anyavilasita shunyam jnana karma janavritam anukulyena krishnanushilanam bhaktir uttama. That's the definition in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of pure devotional service. So there's pure devotion. So we need to act act at least on the level of pure devotional service. We may not be 100% pure devotees, but at least we have to act on that level of pure devotional service. And so that pure devotional service means I'm engaged in devotional service in a favorable way that Krishna is pleased with. And second qualification is what? There's a couple of do nots. Huh? There's one positive thing, which means that I'm completely convinced that I'm going to. This path of devotional service is the perfection of life. Huh? Yes, but there's okay. I'll give a hint. And that is true. That part is true. That has to be there in pure devotional service. And the two things disqualifications are that one is that if a person is chanting Hare Krishna and trying to go forward at the same time thinking, well, I'm chanting Hare Krishna, but maybe if I'm lucky and I chant Hare Krishna nicely enough, maybe I can go and enjoy in the heavenly planets next lifetime. Maybe thinking like that, or maybe if by chanting Hare Krishna, I'll get some good karma so I can enjoy this material world some more. You know, that mentality is wrong. And the other wrong thing, as far as the definition that Srila Rupa Goswami gives, the other wrong thing is if we start philosophizing that maybe the real perfection of life, I like chanting Hare Krishna, but the real perfection of life is merge in the Brahma Jyoti. So if we're thinking like giving up our identity, our personal identity, or if we're thinking, aspiring for good material enjoyment in the future, then those are disqualifications. So you have to be without those two, and you have to be engaged in devotional service, engaged in devotional service in a favorable way, and giving up the karma and jhana, as it's described as those are not favorable. So anyway, this is Srila Prabhupada has given us very clearly the method by which we can do these things, and if we can follow very strictly, chant our rounds, follow the regular principles, come to Mangal Arati, it's very important. Hear the Srimad-bhagavatam class, Bhagavad Gita class. We can do these things very nicely and strictly, and keep our goal to become Krishna conscious and not some other material consciousness. Then we have every opportunity, every chance to finish up our business in this lifetime and go back to the spiritual world. This is what we're given the opportunity for. And we shouldn't think that maybe okay, well, I've eaten a lot of prasadam this lifetime. I've chanted Hare Krishna. I've done some nice things. So maybe I can just kind of like slack off, and I'll take birth in a devotee family in my next lifetime, and then I'll become serious. Then the mind may say like that, but we shouldn't think like that, because even if we do take birth there's no guarantee that if we take birth again, that we take birth directly in a devotee family. And even if we did take birth in a devotee family, there's always that chance that we get in some bad association and forget everything, give everything up. So we shouldn't take that chance. Now while we're here, we know what we're doing. We have we're engaged nicely in devotional service. We have the philosophy that we know why we're doing what we're doing. We know what we should be doing in our spiritual lives, while we have that, we should um, uh, take it seriously and not give it up. Because you've tried to enjoy Maya for millions and billions of lifetimes, so so just one lifetime, give it 100% for Lord Krishna, and they said if you do that, you'll be fully satisfied. If you and then if you don't, if you're not satisfied with that, you still go back and enjoy the material world. Krishna will let us go through the cycle again, but we shouldn't do that. We once we have this opportunity and we have the philosophy and we have the association of devotees, we have the facility to become Krishna conscious, we should take it very seriously in this lifetime and finish up our business. Anyway, there's a couple points. Any questions, comments? Okay. So we'll end for today. And I guess tomorrow somebody else will probably be giving class, right? The Sunday. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.